All right, welcome back to Visual Scripting Crash Course. We're working in Unreal Engine and we're working on our fundamentals and foundations in visual scripting. This is a living freestyle training series and my name's Kevin. We're not really doing class 2 today. I think we're going to go with this as a class 1 workbook. And the goal here is I had some ideas on how to potentially set us all up to be able to join the dots a little bit better and prep for class 2 and the other classes that are coming in a way that we will be able to use this work as a backbone for everything that is to come and as a frame of reference. So what are we going to be doing today? We're going to be doing two major parts. We're going to be doing a little bit of arts and crafts time, where we are going to build a house by hand in 3D. Then once we've built that and we have our template, we're going to take the time and we're going to rebuild that house using visual scripting. So that's the goal, that's the plan today. A couple quick notes. This is not the best way to build a house in Unreal. This is a purposefully laborious or choreful way of doing a house so that we can get to our wax on, wax off moment. What I mean by that is, if you're not familiar with the reference, Karate Kid reference, we're basically going to be building the muscles through a series of tasks, and all of a sudden you're going to wake up and you're going to be super strong. And you're going to understand how things work without even realizing it. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a whole series of these wax on, wax off moments to build these muscles to the point where all of a sudden one day you're going to wake up and you're going to look over and you're going to think, I know Kung Fu. And then you're going to have your Matrix moment. So enough movie references. If you are already super familiar with 3D in Unreal, you can probably just skip straight ahead to the visual scripting portion. All you need is a house made out of default static mesh objects that we are going to then rebuild in visual scripts. So for everybody else who's new to Unreal, maybe not super new to 3D, whatever it is, let's hop in and get started with building a house template. All right, so what we're gonna do, we have our project back open. This is our visual scripting project, and I'm in my visual scripting folder. We're going to need 2 new blueprints before we're done with this, but let's just start with the first one. So I'm going to right click in gray in my content browser. I'm going to create a new blueprint class, and I'm going to call this, this is going to be an actor, and I'm going to call this our blueprint underbar house template, because we are going to use this as a template for the house that we are going to build with visual scripting. As before, I'm going to double click this to open it. And I'm actually just going to dock this up here. Okay, now, if you recall, we briefly touched on last class, there was a viewport. And in the viewport, this is where most of the visual elements happen. And we also even created a static mesh. That's exactly what we're going to do during our arts and crafts time. We're just going to have a little bit more fun with it. So, and we need to be a little bit purposeful about how we do this so it ties in. But it's pretty straightforward. We're just going to add a bunch of little blocks and build a little house out of it. Your house does not need to match my house. It doesn't need to be equally as complex. As long as you get at least 3 or 4 parts in there, we'll be able to use that to do the second part of this workbook time. So what I'm going to do, just like we did before, is over here in the top left, I'm going to choose Add Static Mesh. And that is going to create a static mesh in my scene. But remember, we don't see anything yet. And that is because we have not specified what the visual portion of this static mesh is. So we left click on the static mesh, our details pop up over here on the right. When we look at it, in our drop down for static mesh, this is the visual piece of it. This is important. Static mesh, now we're setting the visual. We're gonna reproduce this later. So remember, create a static mesh, now set the visual. So here we go. In here, I am going to do a cube. Let's just type in cube. And the one that I want is, let's use the basic shapes. It's probably, depending on which engine version you're doing, if you just mouse over each of them, you'll see one that says engine meshes and one that says basic shapes. Let's just use the basic shapes. Now, when we drop that in there, it's pretty big. Now we're getting down to the arts and crafts. This is where I just want you to have some fun and build a little house. If you're new to 3D, you probably don't know how to do that. So let me teach you a couple quick things here. First off, you need to be able to navigate the viewport, okay? In order to navigate the viewport, if you hold the Alt key, it basically enables camera movement. So if we hold the Alt key and left click, you can orbit around your soon-to-be house. If you hold the Alt key and right click, you can zoom in and out. If you hold the Alt key and middle click, that is the pan. So you can move your camera around. You don't have to become a guru at camera movement right now. You just need to be able to use it enough that you can successfully build a house. This does not need to be perfect. Again, this is a workbook, and the overall point here is what we're going to be doing later. Now, in addition to being able to move the camera, you can also press the F key. That will frame what you currently have selected. So I'm just going to zoom out just a little bit. Now, the next piece that you need to know is how do you move objects in 3D? With our cube highlighted, you can see it's highlighted because it has this kind of orangish border to it. And you'll notice, depending on which move mode you're in, you probably defaulted to move, you'll notice that you have this blue, red, and green manipulator in the middle here. This allows you to move objects. If you click the red arrow and drag it, you'll be able to move this cube left and right. If you click the blue arrow and drag it, you can move it up and down, and green arrow, and so on. So if you grab this in the middle, you can move it in all the axes at the same time. In addition to being able to move this with the manipulator, and if you don't see your manipulator up here in the top of the window, you'll see a select and translate objects, and it tells you what the hotkey is, W. So if you're not seeing this widget, press W so that you can see the widget. So for example, if you don't see it like I am right now, just press W or click this button in the top of the viewport, and you will switch to the move tool. Now, just like the move tool, there's a rotate tool and there's a scale tool. Both of those are accessed in the same way. If you click on the little rotate looking thing next to the move tool at the top of the viewport or press the E key, you'll notice that the manipulator changes to, rather than straight lines, it connects to arcs, and you can use this to rotate your objects. The same way you pick each axis and rotate it. And then finally you have scale. Scale is the last one here to the right of the rotate, and you can get to that with the hotkey of the R key. Now, even if you're not comfortable in 3D and moving this stuff around, you can still do all of those same things over here in the transform section in the details. So if I were to type in a location of 10 for X, you'll notice that the cube moves 10 units to the right. What we are going to do here is we are going to add a bunch of static meshes, translate, rotate, and move them and scale them to build a tiny little house. This is not going to take very long. We don't want to spend a ton of time on this. First thing I'm going to do in my house is I'm going to build a foundation. So I'm going to switch to the scale tool by pressing the R key or clicking scale, and I'm just going to scale this down a little bit for the foundation. And then because I know it's going to be difficult because I have snapping turned on, so it's scaling down by a quarter each time, I'm just going to come over here and I'm going to type 0.1 for my foundation. All right. So this is my house foundation. Now let's build some walls. To do that, I am going to add another static mesh. This time, I'm actually going to make sure when you do it, you have the scene root selected. In that case, I didn't actually have it selected, so I had to, if you have it highlighted, you can drag it to another thing and it will parent it. So if I drag this to the scene root, I can just choose attach. That happened last class as well, but you'll have the idea. Now again, we cannot see this mesh because we have not set the visual. We're going to set the visual over on the right. Same thing, if I type in cube, I want to make sure I pick the same cube this time. And in this case, this is going to be our basic shapes cube. And this time, I'm going to use this to build one of my 4 walls. So let's just scale this down. And let's go 0.05, for example. And then I'm going to switch to the move tool, and I'm going to move this up and in place. Now, I'm having some problems with the moving because it's snapping. You can feel it clicking. That is because over here in the right, to the right of your move options, you can see that this enables or disables snapping for each manipulator. So you can have snapping for your move, rotate, and your scale. In this case, I'm going to turn off snapping for move and just have it close enough. Interesting. It looks like our foundation, one of ours is not centered. Ah, yes, our foundation, my foundation is not centered, so I'm just going to center that. I'm also going to make this a little bit shorter. I don't need a house so tall. So this is all we're doing. We're going to move these in place. That looks good for that wall. Same thing again. I'm going to pick my default scene root, add another static mesh, and I'm going to pick my cube again. Choose our engine basic shapes, and this one gets the same thing. I'm going to scale it in 0.05, 0.05, and I'm going to move this into place to be a wall. And then I'm going to look at this one, and I can see that it was 0.5 vertically, so let's scale this one 0.5 vertically. And move it down. Now we have our sidewalls. This is going to be the best house ever. I'm going to move this in place. All right, now we need 2 more walls. I could just add the same thing, but at this point I feel like you would probably have an understanding. Create a static mesh and then set it. That's the important piece of arts and crafts time right now. So I'm going to skip a little bit ahead and do a couple things that are going to make this a little faster for us. We're just going to duplicate this same wall. When I duplicate this wall, now when I move it, this way I don't have to set the static mesh. I'm going to move this off and I'm going to move it in place. All right, and then I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to duplicate this wall. In that case, I'm going to go here. Okay. And then finally, for my house, I'm just going to build a roof. Actually, I'm gonna make it a little bit shorter just so that we can see the foundation a little bit better. That way we have kind of a front porch type thing going. Okay, that's a little better. Now, what I want to do is I want to figure out what we're going to do for the roof. I don't want to get too lost in the roof, but because I'm not sure what kinds of shapes we have available. So if it's not perfect, that's okay. Let's just use a static mesh. I could use 2 cubes that are scaled to make like kind of like a roof pitch, but I'm wondering if we could get, I wonder if there's a pyramid maybe? Ooh, there's a static mesh pyramid. I wonder what that looks like. Oh, that's pretty good. It's a little bit weird. Let's see what else is there. Let's add another. I accidentally deleted my static mesh. Let's go ahead and take a look and see what else we can find that might be able to be used for the roof of the house. A cone, we could use a cone. That would work. That'll probably be the easiest one, so we're not getting lost. So we're not stuck in arts and crafts time too long. I think we'll probably just go with the cone. Let's see. I'm looking for, I think it's a trapezoid maybe. There's a static mesh pyramid. Oh, here we go. This is a ramp. Level, okay, we could use 2 ramps. Let's do this. It's gonna look funny, but that's okay. We can use 2 ramps. So same thing, we have a ramp. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this up. And I'm going to scale it so that it looks good. Okay, that's one side. And then let's duplicate that one and rotate it so that it fits on the other side. Okay, so to get these in place right now, this is, let's go 34 here, 0. I'm going to type this in specifically so that we had 34, 0, and 64. I'm going to do the same thing on this one. By selecting it, we're going negative 34 and 64. Not quite the same. Interesting. I'm not sure why that is, but that's okay. That looks close enough. So there we have it. We have our house. It's a little bit off, so let's just do this. Okay, this is good enough for what we need. We have our house. You can add chimneys, you can add doors. Students do all kinds of different things. It doesn't really matter. At this point, we're going to compile, and I'm going to save this. And this is our house template. We've sort of finished kind of like a brief intro. I told you we're going to accidentally learn some blueprinting along the way. We finished our quick little arts and crafts time, and now let's hop back into the visual scripting aspect of this, where we're going to rebuild this house through visual scripts. So to do that, I'm going to close this house down, and we're going to create another blueprint, and we're going to call this blueprint. It's going to be, we're going to choose right click, choose blueprint, and we're going to choose an actor, and I'm going to call this blueprint my house. My house. Okay, before we start my house, I do want to show you something that's interesting. If we drag our house template onto the level, you'll notice that our house is complete and built in the level. As I mentioned, building the house through visual scripting is probably not the best way to do it, but this is a good way for us to learn how to flex some of these muscles and get comfortable with connecting pins and setting values and all those kinds of things. The blueprint house template displays right away. Our house will not display when we drop it in the level, at least not initially, until we play, because our house is being built by visual scripts. So we will actually have to press the play button to see our house. And I just wanted to show you all that difference. Now, let's bring up our house. The blueprint my house. I'm going to dock this at the top. And then I'm also going to reopen the house template. The reason I'm going to do this is we are going to use this as our cheat sheet for the visual scripting. So what we are going to do is we are going to line by line in begin play build this exact same house. And we're going to use this house template as our cheat sheet. So let's do that. Back in my house, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to our event graph. I am going to clean up the event graph. We don't need anything else right now. We're just going to use begin play like we've been using before. And sometimes if I'm worried about whether or not my code's actually running or my script's actually running, I'll put a print string in here. So let's just, for posterity, if you will, print string. Let's print string starting construction. Starting construction. Okay, so if we compile and save this and we go back to our level, we have our template house, and then let's drag in my house. We'll put it next door, roughly speaking. If we press play right now, you should see in the top left, it printed starting construction, and then also all the other stuff is going on with our class 1 actor. Now I'm going to delete our class 1 actor out of here because we don't need it. So in our outliner over here on the right, it's easier for me to find it because remember, it doesn't really have any visual. Actually, it does now. We could click on these cubes and stuff. I'm just going to delete that out of the level. Do not worry. That just deletes it out of the level. It does not delete it from our class folder. We can always drop that back in later if we want to get back to it. So let's play again. And we will see starting construction. So you can see we're ready to go. Okay. So now that we know that our construction is running and we are printing starting construction, let's go ahead and start building out our house. And we're going to use the template as our cheat sheet. Now, just like we did in our house template, all we need to do is add a static mesh component to begin with. So we're going to start with the floor. So to do this, what we need to do is I'm just going to right click out here in space, and I'm just going to choose add component, and under common, there is a static mesh component. Now, if I connect this in, when we compile this, everything is happy. However, when we press play, there is no visual. This is why we had to go through the process of creating the template so that we understood it in our minds. We need to actually set the visual piece of this, just like we did in the template. So if we drag off of this, we can say set static mesh. And all we are going to do is, just like we did in the template, is we are going to choose our cube. So if I type cube here, I want to make sure that I pick the basic shapes cube. I believe that was the one we were using. It's not the background. Yep. Not the engine message, it's the engine basic shapes. That's the one we want. Okay, so if we compile that now, and we save it, and we press play, when we go in our scene, you'll notice we have a cube. That's perfect. So now all we need to do is set the transform information. So let's figure out what that is. First things first, in our house, with this static mesh component, I'm going to double click on our reroute node and move it down here because I'm going to change the transform information on it. There's two ways to do this. So let's go through both of them. One is, well, actually we'll do the first wall the second way. Let's do this one the slow way, if you will. So here we're going to drag off this and we're going to set location. So we're going to set the relative location in this case. We'll drag this out, double click on our reroute nodes so we have them. And then what would we want our new location to be for the foundation? Well, let's go back to our house template and look at it. Our foundation is 0, 0, and 10 in Z. So let's try filling in those same values. 0, 0, 10 in Z. And then let's grab this. If we press play now, you'll notice that it's a little bit higher, but it's hard to discern the difference. So let's stop and go back to our house template. And let's look at our next thing. There's no rotations. We do need to set the scale. The scale is 11.1. So let's do that. Let's go back to our build house. We're going to drag off this pen and we're going to set scale. And in this case, I'm going to choose the set relative scale 3D. Same thing again. I'm going to double click, get a reroute node just to make it pretty and easy to read. We need to type in 1, 1, and 0.1. Compile, save, and take a look. And now, oh, look at that. We have a house foundation. That's pretty cool. So this is what we're going to do. We are going to use this template to just get used to connecting the pens and setting the values. Now, the first wall I told you we're going to do a little bit different. I'm going to show you a couple little cheats to help make this faster. So we've created our first house, or our first piece. This first piece here is the foundation. Just to make it clear, let's add a comment so that we know that this is the foundation. All of this entire chunk is all about the foundation. So in order to add a comment, what you can do is you can select everything you have here and you can right click and choose create comment from selection. Or you can highlight everything you have here and press C. And what that's going to do is that's going to make a comment box in here and you can just type in here foundation. So now when you look at your code, you can very quickly see your code, your script, you can very quickly see I begin play, starting construction. This is the foundation. The cool thing about the comment is if I move the comment, it all moves together. Okay? And we're just going to continue with our construction. And what we're going to do is we're going to add another static mesh. So let's add a static mesh component again. And this time, rather than setting the translation, the rotation, and scale all individually, we're going to set it all at once. We're going to set it all at once using the transform. So here's our relative transform node. There's two ways we can do this. One is we can drag off of here and we can type make, and there is a make transform option. And here we have location, rotation, and scale. Or, all right, let's just do this one this way. We'll do each one a little bit different. That way you realize there's multiple ways to do this. Now again, we need to set our static mesh. So let's set the static mesh. And I am going to cheat this a little bit, and I'm going to use this looking glass to browse to this static mesh. So it's selected here. And then when I come back to my house, every time I need a cube now, I can just click this button here to fill it in. I could also just click the drop down, type cube, and pick the cube again. Okay, at this point, if we press compile and save and play, we have our foundation, and we also have a giant cube on top of it that's blocking everything. We can't see it. So let's take a look at our first wall. Our first wall has a bunch of settings to it. So first things first, let's go 0.05, 0.676, and 0.5 on this scale. That was 0.05, 0.676, and 0.5. That's our scale. Just to see that happening, if we press play, you'll see that our wall has been scaled. Now we just need to move it up into place. Now we did not have any rotations on it. Those are all zeros. And then we had 29.24, minus 0.54, and 40. I am going to try to remember those numbers. 29.24. 29.25. I think it was minus 40. And, or no, it was positive 40. Positive 40. And 0.5 roughly. Let's see if that's close enough. When we play, we can look at it. I think that's pretty good. Okay, so this is our second wall. And that is now in place. So we could put a window around this, comment it, wall 1. Wall 1. Wall 1. All right, now let's do another wall. Same thing. We're going to drag out. We're going to add a static mesh. We're going to, and actually I'm just going to copy paste. Let's just copy paste. Let's save ourselves some time. Control C, Control V. That way we don't even have to fill anything in. We'll connect it up. This is going to create another one. Now this time, rather than dragging off and making a transform like this, you can also right click here and you can split the struct pin. When you do that, what that does is it makes it so that it's all self-contained in the node. So let's compile. Notice it compiles because it split it out. And we need to get all the information from our next wall. Our next wall is negative 31, 0, 40. Negative 31, 0, 40. And then zeros on the rotations. And then 0.5, 0.7, 0.05, 0.7, and 0.5. That was 0.05, 0.7. 0.05, 0.7, and 0.5, I believe. 0.05, 0.7, and 0.5. Interestingly enough, this looks like it has rotation on it to me, but I don't see it. But that's okay. Let's compile this and see what our house looks like. Oh, we have 2 walls. We're getting there. We're getting there. Okay, so at this point, this is all we're going to do. We're just going to repeat this step. We're going to keep building this muscle. So same thing. I'm just going to copy paste, Control C, Control V, connect this in. And then for our last wall, or our third wall, we'll check our values. I'm going to try something here. I don't know if we can do this. Before I say we're doing this, let's try this. Yeah, it didn't work. Nope, that didn't work. Okay, so we're going to have to just minus 1.35 minus 35 minus 1.35 minus 35 and then 40. Okay, minus 35 and 40. And then let's check our rotations. This one did have a rotation on it. It was basically minus 90. Minus 90. And then we had scales. The scales were all the same. So let's compile and save that and run it. And we should have our third wall. We do. Look at that. We're building a house. Sweet. All using visual scripting. I don't know why I always do houses, but at some point somebody somewhere along the line taught me how to do it with houses, I guess. All right, so copy and save, exact same thing. This is our last wall. And then we just need to check our transform information for it. Everything's the same except it's a positive 30 instead. So let's do that. This is just, rather than minus 35, let's make this a positive 35. Compile and save. Play that. And we have all of our walls in place. Okay, almost there. We have 2 more to go. Now this one, we can't quite copy paste because we need to be able to choose a different mesh. So we can start with a copy paste, but just realize that we need to change the values. So the values are going to be, our transform values are going to be different. And the static mesh that we're using is different. We ended up using the static mesh we ended up using for this, again, to make it easy. If you click this folder icon underneath the visual, this is going to search to that item in your content browser. And then when you go back to your house script, you can just click on the use asset browser selection button, which is the little arrow pointing to the left. And that is going to change it to our triangle thing. And let's look at our values. We've got -41 and 64. So let's do that. -40. So this is going to be the roof. -41, 64, and 0. And I'm just going to comment this as the roof. This is going to be the roof. And then we'll go back to our house. Everything is all zeros and rotations. 0.78, 0.5, and 0.5. Let's just try that. 0.78, 0.5, and 0.5. Let's compile and save that. And let's double check. We got half of our roof. That's great. Let's go back. And let's finish this off. I am going to extend my comment section. To do that, you can just pick it. And then if you move over the side of the comment, you'll see your arrow shows up and you can just extend it out. And then I can Control C, Control V in here. And drop this in. So we just need to set our pieces for the last piece of our house. 37 and 64, so it's just a positive number. 37 and 64. And our rotation is 180. Wrong place. So rather than 90, we're just going to go 180. Everything else should be the same. Compile and save. Let's go back and press play. Something's off. Let's see what we're off by. Where's our rotations? 0, 0, minus 180. 0, 0, minus 180. Minus 180. Our scales are 0.7, 0.5, 0.5. 0.7, 0.5, 0.5, that's fine. Our translations are 37, 0, and 64. 37, 0, and 64. And then for our other one, our translations are -41 and 64. -41 and 64. And our rotation is... Oh, interesting. Our rotations are 0, 0, 0. I missed that. Okay, let's go back. These are supposed to be 0, 0, 0. Compile and save. Press play. Okay, that's it. You have a house. And your visual scripting house is an exact replica of your template house. Mine's not quite perfect because I did some rounding in my numbers, but if you used exact numbers, your houses are complete replicas of each other. So you have successfully built in visual scripting what you built by hand in the house template. So let's take a look at wrapping this up. Today is not about building houses. This is not the way you would build a house in Unreal. This is all about building the muscles for visual scripting. We are going to be using this house and these ideas going forward in order to make changes to our house, build multiple houses, neighborhoods, all kinds of things. We're going to leverage off of this understanding in order to continue to build our foundations in visual scripting. So, as always, if you have comments, throw those down in the comment section below. If you're new and there's something wasn't clear, don't hesitate to ask questions. We have our weekly, it's 2 times a week, AMA Q&As. Feel free to hop into those. Those are Wednesday mornings and Sunday evenings. Depending on time of year, definitely check the schedule. There may be, I might be on vacation or something like that, but in general, Wednesday mornings at 8 a.m., Sunday evenings at 10:15 p.m. Those are Pacific Standard Time. If you're a guru and you're following along, thanks for checking it out. If you have ideas or suggestions, happy to hear those. Basically, all feedback is welcome. And as always, if you dig this content, help us support the channel. You know how to do that better than we do. Share it out, let people know what we're doing. If you have any other creative ideas on how to support the channel, please don't hesitate to reach out, contact me, and let me know. Thanks for watching. Catch you on the next video. Class 2.